Time now for all things Gators. Frangie and Dan Hicken. Dan Hicken, we got controversy. How are you, brother?
Yeah, thank you, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, se-ortho.com for all your orthopedic needs. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The inevitable is going to happen at some point. I mean, DJ Lagway, I think, provides hope for Florida fans. And that's what you're referring to is Lagway versus Mertz. Billy Napier said in his press conference this week, there's a role for both. So I just feel it's a, Napier's just in a can't win situation on this one. I think. I mean, obviously the passionate Florida fan wants to see what and expects to see what Lagway did. Now, again, I'm talking to Chris Doring on the radio side, and he said, "Look, with all due respect to Samford, that ain't the SEC." And he said, "I was at practices. I know that Mertz is more advanced than Lagway, which I think." Are all accurate statements, but Lagway throws and uses the field unlike any quarterback we've seen down there in a long time.
Yeah, I get all of that.
Yeah.
And I also get the dilemma that Billy Napier has.
Yeah.
He's got this guy in Graham Mertz that came back for this fifth, sixth year, whatever it is. Clearly the team leader, clearly a good guy, a good teammate, hard worker, respected, done everything right. And he played really well last year. And his tough numbers against Miami weren't all him. He had no time. People weren't running open. It was going to be a hard go. So I'm a big Mertz fan. I've been a Mertz defender. You know this, Dan.
Yes.
I've been a Graham Mertz defender since before he got there, and I'm one of his biggest fans. So I like Graham Mertz. I would play Lagway. I think there's things about Lagway. Well, you knew he was a great athlete and had all the great highlights from high school and big and strong and fast. But I saw things I didn't expect. I forget that it was Samford. I don't care who the opponent was. It's the eye test. He had better touch than I thought he would have. I thought his field vision, I thought his accuracy, knowing when to run, when not to. He was a more seasoned quarterback than I expected. I expected some big plays and some really bad plays and some miss high, a little bit like Anthony Richardson used to do a little when he first started playing. He was really good. So I think this. Florida, it's a tough year. Look, we saw against Miami that they don't have a great team. They just don't. And they have a brutal schedule that we've talked about ad nauseum. Why not put this guy in? And I admire this about Billy Napier. Whether you like Billy or not, he's too honorable a guy to play someone just to keep his job. He wouldn't do that. He's going to play who he thinks is the right guy. And I get that.
Yeah.
But I think Lagway can do things that Mertz can't do. And the more he plays, the better he will be at those things. So and look, Dan, I get how hard that conversation would be. You bring in Graham Mertz. Look, I've been committed to you. You've been committed to us. It's been a great relationship. Our guys trust you. But my gut tells me our best chance to win the game is with Lagway in there. I understand these are human beings. They're not robots.
Right.
And I understand how hard the conversation would be. But despite all of that, you still have to give your team the best chance to win. And I think, look, if you had great receivers and a great offensive line and all these great players around it, then I would play Mertz because Mertz is less likely to make mistakes. But when you need your quarterback to play above the X's and O's, which is where I think this Gator team is, I would play DJ Lagway.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I would play Lagway too. I just, it's interesting in talking to former players, they are probably leaning towards more, playing Mertz for now. Like I said, inevitably, Lagway's going to be the guy. It might not happen this week. It might not happen next week. But honestly, if you're Billy Napier, you're doing whatever you think you can do to win this football game because, quite frankly, your job is on the line. I mean, let's just call it like we see it. I would say that 95% of Gator Nation and people around the program think Napier is dead man walking, right?
Right.
So the only people I would build an us against the world. We got to try to do it because listen, if you lose to Texas A&M, listen, we're not even looking at Armageddon yet. That's down in November and October, right? You got to get through Texas A&M. You got to go to Mississippi State. You got Kentucky, Tennessee. But if you could somehow, and again, there's this modicum of hope there now based on, maybe, at least for Gator fan, right? Maybe Miami is really, really good, and we did some good things Saturday night, and maybe Texas A&M isn't quite as good because Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, so maybe we can win a tight one, 21 to 17 against A&M. Maybe. And then if we win that, maybe we get a little momentum and we go out on the road and get away from all this and find another win. I mean, that's what you got to hold on to. If you're Billy Napier, you are coaching for your life right now.
And I would say this, and again, I don't think he'll do it for just that reason.
Right.
But it's more than just his job. The excitement in the fan base, the hope in that locker room, I would think that he gives you that. Now, having said all that,
yes,
Billy's old school coach, Dan, you know how old school guy is. The old school guy always believes the veteran is better. The old school guy always believes the guy that's earned his stripes should play. And that, and a little bit, and the problem with that is sometimes old school coach doesn't make the right decision. He's not trying to get it wrong.
right.
He's trying to do what has always been right for 50, 100 years of football, play the tough-nosed veteran guy that's the established leader. The problem is, in this instance, and I love Graham Mertz, but Graham's a good quarterback. I think he is a good player. I probably think he's better than a lot of people do. I think he's a good player.
Right.
And I don't think he's making plays above the X and O's. I think, and I don't think they have a good enough team to play along the X's and O's. If a play breaks down, Graham Mertz is smart. He's not going to throw it into coverage. He's going to tuck it away. He's going to run and make his 3 yards and slide. If the play breaks down, DJ Lagway is going to take off and might make 15 yards. Right. I think that matters. If there's a little bit of a window, and Graham is always going to pick the right guy. Now, he may not get it there because his arm's good, not great. If there's a little bit of a window and DJ happens to pick the right guy, that rifle arm is going to stick it in there. And so because you have an ordinary team, by the way, just so you know, I never wanted Lagway to play before that Miami game. I thought, let him play a few series here or there, but this is Mertz's team, and Florida is better, and Florida isn't improved all around. Well, now I'm not sure they are, Dan.
Right.
Now I think they might be ordinary, particularly on defense, which means you're going to have to play catch-up on offense a lot. And if they're ordinary, you need a player who can play above the X's and O's, and that's why I would play this kid, and he's further along than I thought. So we'll see. Having said all that, Napier hasn't said who he's going to play. No. But is there any doubt in your mind he's starting Mertz in this game against Texas A&M?
Yeah, and that's I would encourage Gator fan, and this won't happen with the students, but it's just it's tough for Graham Mertz because he's going to go out there, and if he messes up, he's just going to get booed, and I hate that for that kid. Now, I will say this: in this day and age, those conversations aren't quite as tough because they've been handsomely compensated to come back to Florida for a 6th year, so we do keep that part of it. And acknowledge that part of it. So, and listen, the bottom line is you play the best player, and the best player is DJ Lagway. Again, and it's a new world now, right? So I'm excited about DJ Lagway, but I'm also worried about DJ Lagway. Okay. Because I want DJ Lagway to be here. I'm not convinced, and I don't think you or anyone is convinced that Billy Napier is going to be here next year. Now, so you start looking to the future, and and I know how this game works. Everybody knows, and they're playing Texas A&M, who was recruiting the hell out of DJ Lagway at the end of the year, at the end of signing day, right? So you don't think that those guys are going to be calling his guys and saying, "How much, guys, is it going to take to get you to come home?" I mean, so there's a lot of moving parts here as we go forward, but you can't make your coaching decisions based on a player. But boy, I think this kid has a chance to be really I'm talking Frank, Heisman Trophy candidate, first round pick in an NFL draft type guy. That's what he looks like to me.
See, you hit two real important things there. Number one, I'm glad you said the first thing you said. Let me reiterate that. A lot of people watch this podcast. There's a lot of Gator podcasts, and Gator fans watch them all. We think a lot watch this one. So if you're watching this, Gator fan, don't blame Graham Mertz if he's out there.
Right.
Don't boo him. Don't be angry with him. His job is to try and be on the field. That's his job.
Sure.
And I know him well enough to know, and I know Billy well enough to know. I say I know Graham. I know him a little bit, but I know Billy. Graham Mertz isn't going to be a baby about this. Right. Graham Mertz is not going to be a bad actor. If Billy says it's DJ Lagway, Graham Mertz is going to be his biggest fan. So when Mertz is out, and vice versa, by the way, they have a great relationship, we're told. So when Mertz is out there, don't boo Mertz. Don't be mad at Mertz. Don't boo it and say, "Well, I'm not booing Mertz. I'm booing the coach." Don't. He's a kid. Don't. I mean, respect the kid. I hope Lagway plays, but if Mertz is out there, let's hope he's very, very good. To your point about Lagway, see, you said it. See, when you get a guy who might be special,
Yeah.
it's hard to find those guys,
Oh,
Dan.
it's we know that better than anybody,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
it's hard to find them. When you get a guy that might be, so they get Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow you could tell was going to be special, but they had a national championship winning team with Chris Leak playing.
Right.
If Chris Leak was sort of the Graham Mertz, okay, maybe better, but he's a good player, but you get my point. But they had Andre Caldwell and Chad Jackson and that great line and those speedy backs and an all-world defense. So you didn't need the freshman who might be special to go lift you above the X's and O's. Well, this is a different team. They don't have all that. And you're right. He might be, listen, people laugh at us, Gator fans, when we say this guy might be the next great thing. But the reality is you don't get that very often. The guy at Tennessee also might be the next great thing, and he's playing. They're excited about it. I know he's been there a year, and I get it. But when you get a guy, to your point, that he might be, listen, when you get a guy that might be Michael Jordan, you got to play him. Most of them never turn out to be Michael Jordan, right? But when you get a guy that might be Michael Jordan, you got to put him on the court. And I think and every once in a while you get a guy that all the evidence says he might be. Again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this guy's going to.
I hear you. Yeah.
But he might be.
Yeah.
And if you get a guy that is, you rarely have a guy that you think might be.
Yeah.
When you get a guy that might be, you got to play. That's the
and then my thought was let's get as many snaps as we can for him this year, and then let's see what we can build on going into next year. And listen, DJ Lagway is kind of a Pied Piper. I talked to one of the Florida commits from Jacksonville who's going there next year. Plays at Riverside. He's a receiver. And, you don't think they don't notice that? The idea of playing with him. So, I mean, but they also know that their coach is on the hot seat too. So there's all this stuff going on here's a hypothetical for you, Frank. Art imitates life. You know the movie Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know Jimmy Chitwood.
Love Jimmy.
Jimmy was a great shooter.
Right.
And Jimmy, and you know that the townsfolk, i.e.
Right.
Gator Nation, hated the coach, right? And the townsfolk had a meeting.
Right.
They're going to vote the coach out, right?
Right.
And so Jimmy Chitwood walks in, and Jimmy Chitwood says, "I figure it's time for me to start playing ball." And now the whole town's that's DJ Lagway. What?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he says, "Oh, but one more thing. If coach goes, I go."
Right. And by the way, it's a great analogy because it's a real analogy, and it really is. And the truth is, and I will tell you this.
Yeah.
If Billy Napier gets fired, you're 50-50 to keep Lagway.
100%.
Do you get Lane Kiffin? Does Kiffin take him to stay in? Do you get somebody else? But there's a chance you lose him. I said this. I know I said it on my air. I think I said it on our podcast, Dan. That after the Miami game, it looked like Billy Napier was going to be out. And I'm never the guy that says that. I'm the last.
Right.
I'm the last guy on the fire the coach boat. You know that. I'm usually on the dock.
You want to give him time. Yeah.
I'm always that guy. But I said after that game, it just doesn't look like he's going to get it fixed because all the same stuff. But I said the one chance he has is if Lagway, and I said this, I know I said it on the radio show. I think I said it last week.
Sure.
The one chance he has is he runs Lagway out there, and Lagway's Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And he's great. Well, game one, again, against a bad opponent, he was.
Yeah.
Now, you run Lagway back out there and you beat Texas A&M.
Right.
And then you run him out there again and he wins in Starkville.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, all the people that were mad as heck at Napier looks up, he's 3-1.
Yeah.
2-0 in the SEC.
Yeah.
He's got the quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
He could you win the next two games with Lagway.
Yeah.
You change that whole narrative.
He would.
And so we said this last week. The only chance I think Billy Napier has, and I'm not a fire the coach guy,
right,
is Lagway runs out there and it's great, and the two are tied together, which by the way they are. And so that's his hope, and that's what I hope he does. Having said all that, good.
I was just going to say, DJ Lagway said at the end of his press conference, they were asking him about Florida and why, and he said, well, there's two reasons. Coach Napier and the fan base has been awesome since I've been here. They treated me well. But he said Coach Napier. I mean, so, yeah, they have a relationship, and it's the best thing Billy Napier's done since getting to Florida. I mean, that's a great pull. I mean, that shows you the kind of recruiter he can be, but they got to win. Because he got a kid from Texas to come to Florida. I mean,
Right. That's right.
that's terrific. Yeah.
So let's get to the game for a second.
Yeah.
Apart from that,
Uh-oh.
I did not watch A&M last week. I watched them against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Notre Dame was clearly the more physical team. Neither team could throw it much, but Notre Dame beat them. And my thought at the time was, okay, Notre Dame's a top 7-8 team.
Mm-hmm.
They beat them in a dogfight. A&M's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois at home. I'm now not sure A&M's that good. So what I want to believe is that Miami is that good. And the reason Florida looked so bad in the first game is they were playing a top 5-8 team, and they won't play another one of those until Tennessee or Georgia. That's what I want to hold on to. Does that make sense? Is there anything to that, do you think?
It's all part of us as Gator fans convincing ourselves, and A&M's going to come in here and they're going to look their defense and the way Elko schemes things up, and he's going to have, packages ready for both Mertz and for Lagway, and they're better than us at the point of attack. I think they're just better. We're going to have to do some special things to win the game. I hope you're right. I think their quarterback play was disappointing, though, for sure. I mean, they were talking about the Wigman kid like he was a NFL guy, and he didn't look like that against Notre Dame. So, yeah, I can buy into all that. And yet we both know it's going to be it's good. I mean, Florida's an underdog at home, bro. Underdog at home.
I know. And Florida's lines were badly beaten by Miami's. Miami won the trenches. They were better. They're better up front, much better. If that happens again, you have no chance. And again, you particularly have no chance if you don't have a guy like Lagway playing, and maybe you can play above that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not. It's hard not to pick. It's hard to pick Florida now.
Yeah,
and, they're a home underdog for a reason.
Ugh.
And they're going to go on the road against a Mississippi State team that's also decent. So it's going to be a hard go here. But boy, this is an important one. If I can get a tie at the line of scrimmage, I don't think Connor Woodman's very good, Dan.
Right.
Can I just get a tie at the line of scrimmage, and that allows the crowd to get involved and to try and do this work. The Swamp crowd's a great crowd.
Yeah.
We never had a chance against Miami.
Right.
The crowd never had a chance to affect that. Remember, Cam Ward goes, well, the crowd wasn't loud. Oregon was louder. And USC was louder. Well, no, they weren't. Right. The reason they were louder is Oregon and USC gave their fans a chance.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. I just did a Jaguar Dolphins game.
Yeah.
That crowd was quiet. It was a peep. You didn't hear a word out of that Dolphins crowd until they hit the 80-yard touchdown.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, it felt like a loud place. So the reason the Swamp wasn't loud against Miami is the Gator football team never gave the fans a chance to be loud.
Yeah.
So
he's got a chance. You got a chance, and I like your thought process, and I like the next 2 Saturdays. And if somehow, some way, you can find ways, but this is it, Billy. Rubber hits the road, man. You got to go out and prove it. You got to go out and prove you know what you're doing on a Saturday. You got to go out and outcoach a staff, have your staff outcoach their staff, and get the most out of your players, and we'll see what happens. But as always, I look forward to it, man.
A couple final things before we get out of here.
Yeah.
What do you think of what we've now seen of the receiving core? Trey Wilson's good. He's got to get some chances.
Mm-hmm.
DK's a good return guy. I don't know that I see much in the receiver game. I like Badger, but I was surprised he wasn't faster. I think you even made the point on Twitter that he could not run a defensive back, but I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
They've lost Khalil Jackson, who they really were counting on.
Play the kids, Frank. Play the kids. Let me see Mizell running deep. Let me see, play the young guys.
Play Tank, play Mizell.
Yeah.
And listen, keep playing 13. I know he fumbled into the end zone. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, he's got something.
Got to play him, man.
Yeah.
You can't say, okay, he fumbled, he's no good. He's not.
No.
I don't think he came back in until the end of the game.
Yeah, he's got play him.
You got to play boss. So anyway, so we'll see. It's going to be a fun day. It's a really, really important day, man.
Oh, man.
In the growth of Florida football, this is an important day. It's one of the most important.
You really almost feel like it's last gasp effort, because look, I mean, even if you go win at Mississippi State and you get to 2-2, and even if you split somehow, Kentucky looked terrible, but even if you split with Kentucky and Tennessee, and even if you knock off UCF, if you got 3 or 4 losses going into Armageddon, it ain't going to be pretty, my man.
Yeah. Ole Miss, unfortunately, is as good as advertised.
Yeah.
And they're part of those last 4 at the end. Final thing, Do you think he starts Mertz, and when do you think he plays Lagway?
I think I'll say third series for Lagway.
Yeah.
I'll say Mertz starts, third series for Lagway.
I think the same thing. I think Mertz starts, and sometime late first quarter, maybe third series, we see DJ Lagway. It's going to be a lot of fun, Dan.
Yeah.
They're always crazy times in Gator Nation. That's
Always, man.
Gators, Dan Hicken and Frangie.
And thank you, as Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. If you have an orthopedic need in the area, go see our friends at Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, se-ortho.com. Frank, have a good week.
You too, Hick.
All right, bro.